In 1988, an Australian family would have an incredible and frightening close encounter with a UFO. In many cases we have covered on this channel, we see stories where UFOs stalk and sometimes abduct individuals on dark, desolate roads. However, this case is particularly intriguing because the craft appeared to attack the family's vehicle, although it's not clear what exactly their intentions were. This case is considered highly credible with multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and also photos. In this episode, we will examine the 1988 Knowles UFO Incident. On January 20th, 1988, Faye Knowles and her three sons, Patrick, then 24, Sean, age 21, and Wayne, 18, along with their two dogs, were driving across the Australian outback when they would have one of the weirdest UFO encounters in the history of Australia. It was around 4 in the morning, and the Knowles family was somewhere between Madura and Mundrabilla. In the car, Sean was driving and Patrick was riding shotgun. As they were driving along, suddenly, Sean would see a strange bright light ahead. Surprisingly, right from the start, the family discussed the possibility it might be a UFO, and Sean, being very intrigued, decided to speed up to try and get a better look. The car kept getting closer to the object, and the light became brighter and brighter. In the next few seconds, they got within 100 feet, and the group would be able to make out an egg-shaped object. Somewhat shocked and wanting to avoid a collision as they speeded toward it, Sean had to swerve onto incoming traffic. As he did, another station wagon was coming toward him, and Sean had to swerve once more to avoid a collision. Once they were back in their original lane, Sean did a quick U-turn so that they could get a better look at the craft. The UFO appeared to be following the station wagon. It wouldn't last long though, and the craft seemed to notice the Knowles family watching it. As such, it stopped, pivoted, and began heading their direction. Things were about to get terrifying for the Knowles family. Sean turned the car around once more and started gunning it in an attempt to outrun the craft. However, after just a few moments, the family would feel a clunking sound, and shockingly, the craft had landed on top of their car. At this point, the UFO would pick up the car, and this would send the family into a full-blown panic. They weren't high off the ground, and there seemed to be some confusion as to what it was doing. As a result, Faye rolled down her window and grabbed whatever was on top of the car. She felt something strange, a material she had never felt before. It was warm and rubbery, although it wasn't so hot it burned her. As she pulled her hand in the car, everyone saw her hand was covered in dust, and this caused even more panic. Patrick started to roll down his window, but after some dust blew in, he quickly rolled it up. At this time, there was a horrific smell in the air, one which the family later compared to a dead body. Also at this time, a high-pitched noise began emitting, and this caused the already worked-up dogs to go crazy. Something really bizarre happened next to the family. Time began to slow, and the group went from feeling frightened to becoming disoriented. As they spoke, their voices slowed, as well as their movements. Even worse, Patrick would state it felt like something was sucking his brain out. Faye would also add that it felt like something went into their heads. Sometime later, the family would feel the car slam onto the road, and the impact blew out their rear right tire. The car stopped, and the family got out, rushing to the brush to hide. They waited around 15 minutes to ensure the UFO was gone. The Knowles were terrified at the time, but began to change the tire. It's not clear how long the ordeal really lasted, especially with the time distortions. The family soon drove into town, and there ran into a truck driver named Hewley. Hewley had seen the UFO in white light as well. The family frantically recalled their story to him, and soon a few other curious truckers walked over too, examining their car. There was some sort of black dust, both inside and out, which Hewley would tell UFO investigators was like a fine silicon sand. They did collect samples, which we'll dive into in just a bit, but something even more strange Hewley and his friends noticed. The top of their car had 4 indentations. The Knowles at this time decided to head over to the police station, while Hewley and 2 of the truckers decided to go to the scene. There, Hewley and company would find skid marks, footprints, and tread tracks where the Knowles car had been dropped. Meanwhile, at the police station, the Knowles were retelling their story to the police. The family were still very shaken up, and soon the police would examine their car. They, like the truck drivers, would note the 4 indentations on top of the car and also the fine dust. Word would soon reach UFO Research South Australia, and Keith Basterfield was brought in. Basterfield would state it appeared to be an extraordinary example of a close encounter that had left physical traces. However, around this time the press picked up the story too, and soon it became somewhat of a circus. A TV station was contacted, and they arranged to have the dust tested. Their analysis was inconclusive, yet UFO researchers stated they didn't even test the correct dust. UFO researchers arranged to have samples from that night tested by a NASA scientist named Dr. Richard Haynes. Haynes would conclude there was no evidence of it being alien or unusual. Similar results were found by other scientists too. So did the Knowles family create this entire story in an attempt for fame, or were they truly attacked by a UFO? Comment and let us know your thoughts. Skeptics are quick to point out the results of the dust analysis. However, there's quite a bit of evidence something strange happened that night. First, besides the Knowles family and Graham Hewley, others would report strange lights in the sky too. It should be pointed out that the person or people in the station wagon who almost collided with the Knowles were never found. Another solid piece of evidence comes from some of the other physical evidence in the case, such as the dents on top of the roof. While the family could have done these, the dents surely were not from any type of fender bender. Probably the best piece of evidence, though, comes from the family. The family was questioned by the police, the truckers, and multiple UFO researchers, and no major inconsistencies were found. Probably the only confusion in the story was around when they were under the car, as time slowed, and all of them became disoriented. Their descriptions of how it felt were somewhat different. That said, what can we make of the UFO's actions and how it compares to other cases? The beginning of the Knowles story is extremely common in UFO sightings. They saw a bright light on a remote road in the middle of the night. Sometimes people are followed and even abducted. However, there's no cases we can think of where a craft has lifted a car off the road and seemingly drove it down the road. There are cases where cars have been taken into crafts. However, there's not many cases of UFOs doing what it did to the Knowles. This has led some to speculate that the beings operating the UFO became angry, and that led them to scare the Knowles. Still, this raises the question, why didn't they just abduct them? UFOs are reported to follow vehicles and people from time to time, but usually they do it in a non-threatening manner. It should be said, while most UFO sightings appear in desolate areas with few witnesses, sometimes these sightings can occur in crowded areas. For example, we covered the 1994 Plön, Germany case, a case in which many German citizens spotted a UFO floating among the high-rise apartment buildings. Also, another case we covered happened in Italy in 1954 at a soccer game. Several UFOs hovered right over the stadium, stopping play and stunning the audience. This event was witnessed by tens of thousands of individuals. One important aspect too of this case is that the beings, if they were angered, displayed emotion. Many report these entities are devoid of emotion and seek to understand it. Some, though, think the abductions are about understanding it, as well as the human soul. In addition, many say gray aliens are the worker bees and are robotic in nature. Some think those at the top understand and feel many emotions. Some speculate these shot callers are the praying mantis beings, one rarely seen, but in many cases reported to be in charge. Regardless of the motivation of the beings, this event was surely a strange one, and one that seems pretty credible.